The Assembly of First Nations in Quebec and Labrador reminds François Legault that people lived in Quebec before Samuel de Champlain. CIJA has violated the Lobbying Act, but was not sanctioned for having done so. Ontario woman has her citizenship revoked due to a minor detail in her mother's citizenship ceremony 32 years ago. Flooding in Kenya has triggered a cholera outbreak, and Ukraine will now recruit from among prisoners for their army. Good morning. It's Thursday, May 9th. I'm Nora. Here are your headlines. We'll start today in Quebec, where the Coalition Avenir Québec government continues to show us what a nationalist federalist government looks like. The province recently announced that it would open a new National History Museum, which, naturally, would start history at the arbitrary counter of the arrival of Jacques Cartier in the 1500s. This comes from Morgan Lowery at the Canadian Press. Explicitly, François Legault said that, of course, Samuel de Champlain is, quote, the founder of our nation, unquote. And at the same event where Legault made these comments, historian Éric Bédard said that technically history started when it was written down, and so Indigenous people, quote, represent a bit the prehistory of Quebec, unquote. No one tell Bédard that not even Quebec's elementary school history books are saying that anymore. Anyway, as you might imagine, the Assembly of First Nations of Quebec and Labrador was like, WTF. Chief of the Assembly, Ghislain Picard, said this, quote, the First Nations have been present here for millenniums and are deeply attached to the territory they occupy. To suggest that we are prehistory amounts to relegating us to a secondary role, while our contribution to the formation of modern Quebec is fundamental, unquote. Thinking himself clever, I imagine, Legault doubled down by explaining that Quebec's Indigenous people do not consider themselves part of the Quebecois nation and therefore wouldn't be part of a museum that, quote, will focus specifically on the history of the French-speaking Quebecois nation, unquote. A new member of Quebec's cabinet, Kateri Champagne-Jourdain, said that the history of Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in this province are, quote-unquote, intimately linked. Next, Davida Mastracci from The Maple is reporting that the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, or CIJA, lobbied an MP in January after they were warned not to do so, but they faced no consequences. A new rule was added to the lobbyist code of conduct that stopped groups from taking MPs that they lobby or might expect to lobby on funded trips. The law was added in May 2023 and took effect in July 2023. Now, you might think that this is an obvious rule that should have been in place, but it wasn't. CIJA asked for the rules to be suspended for them for July 2023, as they were already planning to take a bunch of MPs on a Zionist bender. The commissioner agreed because the trip had been previously planned, but told CIJA they could not lobby any of the 7 MPs that they took on the trip for 2 years. But CIJA did anyway. They lobbied Scott Aitchison, who disclosed almost $13,000 of benefits related to their trip. Privacy Commissioner Nancy Bélanger told The Maple that she believed that CIJA lobbied Aitchison by accident, though CIJA also apparently invited the other MPs that had been on their trip as well. CIJA has taken at least 73 MPs on Zionist benders, and they have paid at least $894,000 for travel for these trips. Next, to the story of Ariel Townsend. Ariel Townsend is a woman who lives in Ajax, Ontario, and she has had her Canadian citizenship revoked, forcing her to pay hundreds of dollars to get it back, getting lawyers involved, getting affidavits signed, and generally having a massive pain in the ass dealings with the federal government. Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada said that citizenship was given to Ariel in error 32 years ago. CBC's Olivia Bowden is reporting that Ariel has lived in Canada since she was a baby, and her mother received a citizenship card before she was born. IRCC said that they didn't believe that Ariel's mother was actually a citizen when she was born. Her mother got a citizenship card before she was born, but didn't actually take the oath of citizenship until after Ariel was born. Ariel's mother had to file an affidavit on the order of operations of her getting her citizenship 32 years ago. And in it, she said that she had asked an officer what she needed to do to ensure that her daughter would be a citizen. That officer told her that her daughter already was a citizen because she was a citizen. And then she received a citizenship card. Ariel was born in Jamaica, but her mother had been living in Canada for years. She wanted to be around family for her birth, and so Ariel was born in Jamaica and didn't come to Canada until a few months after. For this ridiculous application of the rules, Townsend will have to pay $600. She cannot visit her father-in-law in the United States as she's not a citizen right now, and her employment is threatened. Her lawyer said that he hopes that this will be sorted immediately. Now to international news, and first to Kenya. Flooding there has triggered an outbreak of cholera in the Tana River County. So far, 44 cases have been reported. Tana River County has been most impacted by flooding, reports AfricanNews.com. The flooding has forced 14 health clinics to close, and there is a shortage of drinking water for about 3,000 people. And so far, some 237 people have died as a result of the floods. The floods, you might recall, are the result of a particularly strong El Niño this year, which has been exacerbated by climate change. And finally, Ukraine has just passed a bill that would liberate some prisoners to join the armed forces to fight Russia. The move comes amid a growing shortage of soldiers, reports Al Jazeera. Russia has been doing this already since they invaded Ukraine, and it's something that Ukraine has been very critical of. Russians who signed up in February 2022 were promised a pardon if they served for 6 months. But for Ukraine, this isn't going to be the same system. And it's also not conscription. Joining would still be voluntary, and anyone who is guilty of sexual violence, serious corruption, or who is a former high-ranking official will not be allowed to serve in the military. Neither is anybody who's killed 2 or more people, which seems a little odd considering they already have demonstrated the aptitude for murder. Prisoners who have less than 3 years to serve can apply, and they would be granted parole, not a pardon. Those are your headlines for Thursday, May 9th. I'm Nora. God, this week is just flying by. If you ever want to watch a week fly by, have an incredibly oppressive deadline staring you in the face, and you're going to just feel every second of it disappear from under your fingertips. You are listening to this podcast at sandynora.com, on the Real News Network podcast feed, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Have a wonderful Thursday. Tomorrow is Friday, and we're almost there. I'll talk to you then.